Welcome to Building the Future with your host, Kevin Horick. Get ready to explore the cutting edge of innovation and entrepreneurship. From startups to industry giants, we're bringing you the visionaries shaping tomorrow. With listeners in over 150 countries, we're one of the fastest growing shows worldwide. Join Kevin, a seasoned software designer and tech expert, as we dive into the ideas and inventions changing our world. Building the Future starts now.
Building the Future is brought to you by iClerk.ai. Are you a small business owner, a professional, or company looking to automate? Do you have difficulty hiring staff to perform mundane knowledge work like reporting, form creation, or information analysis? Leverage the power of AI and the automation of agents, even if you don't have the time or experience. Try us out with little risk and no upfront investment. It's time to work smarter, not harder. Visit iClerk.ai to learn more and get started today.
Welcome back to the show. Today we have Nikita and Iliya Bridan, co-founders at Oilstainlab. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you guys on the show. I think what you guys are doing is actually really innovative and cool, but maybe before we dive into that, let's get to know each one of you a little bit better. Nikita, do you want to go first, and then I'll let your brother go?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start us off. We're twins, so there's gonna be some overlap. And
Very cool.
yeah,
Very cool.
Originally born in Ukraine, then moved to Canada when we were about 2 or 3. Grew up there with a big passion, obviously, for hockey, skiing, and
Sure.
drawing.
Whereabouts in Canada?
Halifax, Nova Scotia, very far on the east coast.
Okay, I actually live in Edmonton, so
Okay.
yeah,
A little bit colder.
Nice area though. It's a beautiful area. Okay, keep going. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, no worries. And grew up in Halifax, and then at 14 years of age, decided drop out of high school, moved to Italy, study car design, and had some very nice parents that supported that crazy dream. Moved with us, let it happen, and then at 17, moved to California to study car design. So that's kind of our backstory before sort of the professional career where we've been working for the last 10 or so years in California.
Okay, so how does that work though, to be so young and go study? Like, how did that work?
So yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Technically, high school dropout, so no high school diploma.
Right.
Going to an art college is not, let's say, the most academically strenuous thing to do, right? Like, there's not a huge amount of requirements other than being able to draw well. I mean, it's bizarre, it's strange. I think without our parents, we definitely wouldn't have been able to do it, obviously, without their support or anything. But yeah, we actually got accepted into a different school in the UK, Coventry, and they denied us as soon as they found out how old we were, which was
Interesting.
It was heartbreaking. So we ended up in Italy instead.
Okay, Iliya, do you want to give us a bit of a background of yourself?
Yeah, I mean, very, very similar, I guess. All parlayed until after Italy, we basically ended up coming to California, Pasadena, to ArtCenter College of Design, and finished up our college degrees. After that, basically, we graduated and started working professionally. I worked at Honda, or actually Toyota first. Spent I think a year and a half there, and then Honda for something like 7 years. Worked on tons of production cars, concept cars, race cars. Our Acura DPI won 2 world championships there, which is super cool.
Wow, congrats! That's huge.
Yeah, that's kind of like, I don't know. That's like peak. Production cars are cool, but like, world championship, like Juan Pablo Montoya driving your car, that's pretty awesome. And then
100%. That's really cool.
And then after that, ended up going to a Chinese brand actually that started a brand new studio in Newport Beach, and spent a few years there. Worked again on some concept car stuff, some production programs, and then ended up going to another startup, a company called Canoe. These
Okay.
little quirky electric vehicles, and it has since gone bankrupt. But yeah, that was a very interesting time, and then obviously during this whole time, building and developing our design studio brand, Oilstainlab, kind of on the side, and then eventually jumping full time as well. So yeah.
Got it. Nikita, do you want to give us a bit of your kind of career history after getting out of
Yeah,
school?
yeah, totally. So me and my brother went together to Toyota, like you said, and then we both moved on to Honda. So at Honda, I stayed there for 3 years, and after those 3 years, I moved on to Hyundai and was part of the team that was sort of helping launch Genesis as a brand. And after
Okay.
four
Yeah.
months, 4 months, I quit. That was a very miserable experience for me. I did not like the work culture there at all. So I quit after 4 months and moved on to General Motors Advanced, where we worked on really crazy stuff, flying cars, all sorts of stuff, really advanced
Cool.
things. And after General Motors, I joined my brother at the Chinese company for about a year at GAC, and then after that moved on to kind of Oilstainlab full time, working with a lot of startups. So doing everything from energy grid, battery charging, to electric vehicles, to hydrogen vehicles, to movie stuff, space stuff, just all over the place. And that was sort of the heyday, I guess, of Oilstainlab as a design studio, and now it's changed into a boutique manufacturer of vehicles.
Okay. So walk us through that journey and why did you make that switch to manufacturing vehicles now?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've always had this passion for, building real things. And throughout our careers, I mean, luckily we did build, show cars. We're involved in real physical things, but 90% of the work you do gets, thrown out or trashed or never
Right.
seen. And, I think anyone who likes real things, who lives in the real world, wants to, have an impact on that. And so we decide, okay, like we can sketch and we can render and we can do this, but ultimately we want to build something without other people's compromises, like our vision, what we
Right.
think would be, a proper sort of vehicle without, guys from finance or guys from engineering telling you can't be done because we need to save like 2 cents on a door handle, right?
Right.
So it's a very, it's we call it the No Excuses Project, and it's been 3 years in development, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun, but a lot of challenges. But it's going to be real very soon.
Okay. So walk us through kind of coming up with the idea and kind of where it is today and when can people actually like drive it?
Sure. I think it's a long story. I think I'll try and take a quick stab at this. But essentially, when we started Oil Stain Lab as the design consultancy, one of the first things we wanted to do was to build a visual business card, so that people
Okay.
kind of knew what we stood for. And so that's essentially when we started building our first prototype, which was the original Half 11 vehicle. And that one basically had kind of a fake history. It was kind of inspired very much by the past and Can-Am racing and Le Mans and sports prototypes from the late 60s. Um, and that vehicle basically did yeah, I mean, it did its job, right? As a visual business card, people approached us. We, opened a lot of doors for our studio. But at the same time, something kind of strange happened, and the car started to develop like a cult following. And as that kind of following grew and the car got invited to go to places and events and stuff, um, there was also people reaching out and asking like, well, can I buy one? Can I do this? Can I do that? And it was very much a hand built one-off vehicle. It was never intended to be manufactured or anything. And so yeah, that was the genesis, I guess, to create the production program. And so, yeah, 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it is now, we started the production kind of design for the vehicle. But yeah, looking at it from modern engineering, modern design, modern technology point of view. So almost kind of recreating that vintage feel for today's world. And so, yeah, our first prototype, I think we're looking at trying to get it up and running. I would say like late April, May.
Okay. Interesting. So, I don't know very much about the car business, but obviously building a one-off is not without its challenges, and it's not challenging and time consuming, but making one vehicle is going to be a lot easier than, making dozens or hundreds or thousands of these things. So how did you kind of ramp up from basically building something yourself to now trying to get like an assembly line, or how does that kind of work? Or like walk us through that journey of actually turning it into a production car that people can buy.
Yeah, you've pretty much hit it, the nail on the head there. Anyone can build one thing, right? That's
Sure.
relatively easy. It just takes, a lot of elbow grease, some ingenuity. I think, yeah, with cars, there's this interesting sort of dilemma, as it also requires an insane amount of capital, right?
Yeah.
Um, this isn't something you can sort of, like software is relatively less capital intensive, for example, but hard goods, they require tooling and manufacturing and, sophisticated sort of engineering. So, I mean, part of it was figuring out, okay, how do you go about raising the capital to do this? So that was the first sort of initial hurdle to clear. And then once that sort of sorted itself out, it was assembling, a world class team of engineers that understood also again that they're not working for a huge company and that budgets are tight. And how do we go about creating a world class product without, spending $1 billion? So um, it's a very daunting task. I think many days and many nights we would sit and just be like, what the heck? How are we going to do this?
Fair enough. Yeah, yeah. So I'm curious though, are you using like parts from other like manufacturers? Are you building everything yourself, a bit of both? How does that kind of work?
Yeah. So the approach has been from the very start to again be very intelligent with budgets and engineering, timeframes and everything. And because of that, we are not able to completely engineer everything ourselves. So there are
Right. Makes
items
sense.
that, for example, like it's going to be the items that really no one thinks about. An air conditioning vent, for example. You turn the
Okay.
knob, it closes, it moves the air around. To re-engineer, to do that from scratch, to do 25 units makes absolutely zero financial sense, right? And it's
Right.
already a good product that's been engineered, and a company like Ford or Hyundai or Rolls Royce or whoever have spent, two, three, four, $5 million on this one vent. So it'd be foolish
Sure,
not to do
sure. Yeah, interesting.
it, right?
Okay.
And yeah, so it's these really small but complicated items that we use strategically that don't really affect the user experience, but
Right.
they add to it in a way that it's very professional and that it works, right?
No, makes a lot of sense. And then I'm assuming it's not hard to get some of those parts, whether you need, say, 25 or, 200,000 kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously parts availability. Again, if you're intelligent about it, if a part breaks on your car, you can go buy it on eBay or wherever, right? So
Right. I see.
if
Yeah, yeah,
you're
interesting.
smart enough, you can sort of design it so you don't really need to sign a contract with that company.
Interesting. Yeah, okay. No, that makes sense. So maybe walk us through some of the specs of the car? I know it's kind of hard to talk about, like visualize the car when it's audio only, but can you maybe try?
Of course, yeah. So I think, as we've kind of mentioned, it's 1960s inspired. So it's sort of romantic surfaces, not a lot of lines or breaks, very smooth. And underneath, and is where all the aerodynamic performance is, right? So if you're familiar with sort of high performance cars, there's always big spoilers and things sticking off the car. So we've eliminated all that, and we use kind of a what's called ground effect, so a big diffuser underneath the car that kind of sucks it down at high speed. And then on terms of the chassis side, underneath it's a carbon fiber monocoque, so that's relatively cutting edge these days, with front and rear subframe. And for powertrain, we have two options. So you can use either a combustion gas engine, which is a flat six that revs to 12,000 RPM, makes a lot of noise. It's a very nostalgic, extreme sort of race motor experience. And we've also got the option of a cutting edge electric powertrain that is projected right now to be lighter than combustion. So it's really revolutionary stuff. It's paired with a 6-speed manual. It makes noise. It's unlike any other EV basically in the world. And so we've got these two very extreme cutting edge powertrain options. So yeah, that's kind of the brief description of the project, I guess.
Okay, very cool. So how, like, is there kind of price ranges for these things yet? Is it still kind of too early? Like, are you taking pre-orders? Like, where are you kind of in the sales process?
Yeah, so we launched publicly in October last year. But
Okay,
prior to that, we've been in really close communication with a lot of collectors and enthusiasts, and obviously gathering feedback. So we've got
sure.
a pretty large network of individuals that have been interested, have known about it. So yeah, pricing on the cars is 1.8 with a
Okay,
single powertrain, and then 2.35 with both powertrains, and then client can basically choose between the two. So yeah, and yeah, I
interesting.
mean,
Okay, no, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. One thing to add that I think he hasn't mentioned is between the two powertrains is there's actually the swappability aspect of it. So if a client was to buy the two engine options, we're basically designing the car so that one engine can get swapped in, and for the other one in around an hour, 2 hours, something like that, just by themselves. So that's kind of like
That's
a very,
cool.
very revolutionary kind of aspect of the car.
Yeah, that's actually really quite fascinating because, and this is probably like a terrible comparison, and maybe you'll have a better one, but it's almost like the right to repair, because like people have been complaining about that with like their iPhones for decades now, right? But the fact, it sounds like your car, if I know what I'm doing, I could do a lot of this stuff myself. That fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a perfect example, and I think there's a lot of concern even amongst like sports car enthusiasts with EVs that they're not really able to modify them or get into the code or
Right.
anything. So it's all becoming very sealed and very proprietary, and that's not really what sports car guys want. They want to tune their cars, they want to modify them, they want to be a part of that maintenance, repair, improvement experience. So no, you're absolutely 100% correct.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the interior, and I know maybe it's different kind of in the people you're targeting, but are like your customers wanting, the touch screen kind of experience? Are they looking for more the traditional analog kind of buttons and knobs, a little bit of both? Maybe walk us through that.
Yeah. So from a user sort of experience or expectation, we're very much trying to be, I guess an analogy would be like a time machine, like to go back in time
Okay. Yeah.
without necessarily losing a lot of the functions, but the way that you access them or the way that you use them, we want them to be not modern. We want them to be very analog. We want them to be very, button heavy, and sort of physically intuitive rather than screens. Which isn't to say that we don't have modern amenities. It's just the way you interact with them is not a touch screen, not a. And I think part of it is, at that price point, screens become. I mean, every car has a screen, right? And the user
Yeah, yeah,
experience isn't special enough, right? And so, it becomes the analogy of like the Apple Watch versus a Rolex, right? Which one will retain
yeah.
value? Which one is collectible? Which one? And so it's a bit maybe old fashioned, but that's where kind of the market expectations at.
No, that makes sense. Well, I think there's been such a big resurgence of kind of some of the analog stuff. I think the most basic example that people would probably relate to is just like records coming back and like vinyl, and then I think even a lot of people hate the touchscreens in their car because they have to go 3 or 4 screens deep just to like, turn up their heat or something. Where some of the, if you just had a button on there that you would just handle it, like kind of the old school cars had, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think Honda famously got in trouble with their volume button, right? They removed
Yeah.
that and then put it like three menus deep. So yeah, I think the challenge really is, how many buttons do you really need in a car, right? And
Yeah.
certain features don't necessarily require a button. They can be 3 4 deep, but it's just how do you decide the kind of the organization of all that? And I think every brand obviously does it their own way. We, for our vehicle, we're trying to simplify everything as much as possible. So we do have physical buttons, but the amount of controls and stuff that you actually need for driving pleasure and even going to a track day is kept to a minimal. So it's bare necessities, and that's it, kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, to add, like, we're very very motorsport derived, and there's no touch screens in
Right.
motorsport because when you're driving 200 miles an hour at a track, like, you can't look down at
Yeah.
a screen and be like, oh, I got to go over here. It's all got to be intuitive, physical, and easy to adjust on the fly.
Fair enough. And I'm assuming you're kind of targeting people this isn't their like everyday driver to and from the office. Like they might take it on certain days, but like it's made for to have fun, basically. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, we jokingly refer to all our clients and internally our team as well. Like, we're all maniacs. We're all these
Okay,
crazy
yeah.
gearheads, and ideally they would use this every day. I mean, it is relatively
Okay.
comfortably usable, but we don't expect everyone obviously to use it every day. Only a true maniac would.
Fair enough. No, okay, cool. So I'm curious though, is it connected to the internet? Because obviously, like if it's the EV version, just knowing where a charging station is, or do I have to get it home, or how does that kind of work?
Yeah, we're working on effectively having it connect to your phone.
Okay.
So it's not. We're trying to, yeah, disconnect the car from the grid or disconnect it
That makes
from
sense.
anything that could slow it down or cause issues. I mean, obviously we can do updates over the air, but that would be done in, for example, in a garage, not at like a Starbucks parking lot or something. So
Right.
yeah, it's going to depend on the infrastructure that already exists, like phones, etc., for data transfer, instead of having those things built into the car.
Yeah, no, that's smart. That makes sense. So I'm curious, like, maybe we kind of skipped over it a little bit. So you launched it to the public last October, and when are you hoping to have it in your first kind of early adopters' hands?
Sure. Basically, start of production is going to be like the first customer vehicles will be 26.
Okay, so
So
not that long.
Yeah, 25 is essentially a year of development for us of the physical first prototype, which should be complete late April, early May.
Right, right, okay.
And then basically we go and we test it. We take it to tracks, we take it to proving grounds, We do all the typical stuff. We do vibration tests, we do high speed testing, we do hot weather testing, and just make sure everything is good from all our kind of virtual planning, so to speak. And yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. So I'm curious, are you building your own manufacturing facility to build the cars? Are you outsourcing that to somebody else? Like, walk us through that.
Yeah, it's yeah, like I said, well, it's been a long 3 years of a lot of planning. Think
Can
people don't
imagine.
think of all the legal requirements and the physical and the supply chain and everything. So yeah, we've been slowly building that out over the last 3 years. The vehicles will be finally sort of assembled in Canada. That's
Okay,
where we're from. We certainly want to go back there. And we use a number of partners for a lot of the components. So for example, the carbon fiber monocoque chassis, that's going to be built by a group or a manufacturing group as contract. And it's such a specialized thing that there's really only like 10 shops in the world or 10 manufacturers that can do that. And it doesn't
I
make
see.
sense to sort of develop your own team, educate everybody. Nobody does that internally except some of the biggest automotive manufacturers in the world. So usually it's
Right.
all sort of contract manufactured by these carbon fiber, factories, let's say. And so for a number of components like that, obviously we're not making our own brakes or brake calipers. We use, Brembo as a supplier, and so
Right.
a lot of the parts are going to be brought in. And then, we do manufacture a lot of sort of on the subframe stuff, like a lot of the stuff on the interior. That's all manufactured in house through, robotic machinery, CNC, or carbon fiber molds, but less sophisticated than what's required for a carbon tub.
I see. Interesting. Okay. So where like okay, so you've been building this for a number of years. You're gonna, start kind of test this. How do you kind of iterate on this as you're going forward? Because I guess if you're building it in a way that it's relatively easy to swap things out and people can kind of modify it as needed, then you almost have like the community iterating with you and making it better. Is that fair to say, or does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand the sentiment. Certainly, the cars. One of our key goals was a modularity, simplicity to sort of repair, modify, etc. We probably wouldn't want to encourage a lot of modification from the clients, just from a legal point of view.
Okay, fair enough.
But certainly, yes, we can evolve the cars over time, and depending on client wishes. So, like in this market segment, a client could say, hey, listen, I really want to focus on track days. I want to have more performance. Can we improve the cooling? Can we improve the downforce? Can we improve the mechanical grip? Can we lose some weight here and there? And so we would work with them to improve those components and those, you know,
I see.
areas. And so it's a little bit different where it's, yeah, not someone necessarily doing it in their backyard, but they're doing it with our team of, global experts. And so we can make sure everything is still safe, because the performance envelope is so high, someone can get
Right.
into, a lot of hurt really quickly.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's cool that you can basically, like, somebody could get something so custom though, right? Like, I don't know very many other manufacturers that do that much custom, or am I missing that?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly very, very, sort of rarefied air, let's say.
Yeah, okay.
Ferrari will build you a one off, but it's, 20 million. So,
Right. Yeah, okay, fair enough. So you guys have obviously both been doing this a long time, and building and designing things in the physical space is actually really challenging. What advice would you give to people that are, whether they're building a car or not, just things to think about and do that you maybe wish you knew earlier on before you were kind of in the middle of this?
Oh, great question. Yeah, I think building cars is one of the most complicated things in the world. I think probably
Sure.
airplanes and spaceships are a little more difficult. Granted, I think they have a little less stylistic involvement or
Right.
emotional kind of aspect to them, but I think no matter what, we were very lucky and privileged to work for OEMs, right? And there
Right.
you're exposed to all the facets of the business. And I think if you one day want to do whatever it is, architecture, airplanes, cars, products, whatever, the best thing you can do is essentially go to the most successful places, the biggest corporations, and like a sponge, eat up all the information you can from every different department. Um, just pick the brain of all the geniuses and smart people, and basically absorb it, right? I think at the end of the day, you're just a reflection of everything you've been exposed to, essentially, and what you've been able to absorb. So, um, yeah, my biggest advice is just be like a sponge for information. In terms of like on our particular project, what I wish, gosh, that's a great question. You have anything to add while I think? Yeah, no, I mean, I
Mhm.
would say, the advantage of, or sort of not being afraid to make mistakes. I think that's,
Yeah, it's
something.
really good advice.
Whenever things get physical, I think people realize like if you make a mistake, it has a a monetary cost, a time cost, right? Because it's a physical product. For example,
Yeah.
if you're just doing some code or you're drawing in Photoshop or you're doing something digital, like you can start over. Like yeah, there's some sunk time, but there isn't a physical cost. So it's like once you start prototyping, and I think that leads to a lot of paralysis. It leads to a lot of people sort of freaking out, but nothing is ever perfect, and the cars from and other products, they're never perfect. And if you go talk to
Right.
those teams, they're like, oh, I wish we could have done this, wish we could have fixed that. And so yeah, being we I think we are, both of us are perfectionists, but also we have a really good ability to just pivot when something's messed up and just be like, all right, we got to embrace that. Like let's keep moving.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually really good advice. You guys mentioned something maybe earlier on in the interview. Obviously, you've had some probably challenging days, weeks, maybe even months. How did you guys persevere and decide not to quit? Because I think a lot of times people are just about to the top of the mountain and they give up before they really give it a good shot. So, advice for kind of keeping with it?
Gosh, there's been so many times I thought I was at the top of the mountain, only to realize the mountain is 10 times taller.
Fair enough.
I think we're very lucky that there's two of us. So it's
Sure.
very rare for both people as co-founders and basically the lead motivators. And it's very rare for both of us to be down at the exact same time, right? So
Right.
I think that's a huge advantage. I think having just the team that can support you. Yeah, I
Uh,
think exactly that. I think we call each other's enabler basically, and it's when
that's
someone
good.
gets down or someone thinks it's like, oh, that's a bad idea. The other guy is just like, oh, like what's the worst that happens? Like let's just try it. And so yeah, it is definitely an advantage, having kind of that twin kind of, yeah, I don't know, mentality, I guess, or whatever. So yeah.
I'm curious advice for working together with, siblings or family because obviously you guys have done that for so long. It seems to be working really well for you two.
Yeah, I don't know how relevant our situation is for family or siblings. I feel like twins are a little bit unique. They're very, I mean, you grow up with someone for, gosh, for us it's like 30 plus years, whatever. We've basically done everything together, and so
Right.
there's like, yeah, very much an unspoken like understanding that is just borderline unnatural. So I mean, obviously conflicts. Obviously, there's conflicts, and I think we do have different mindsets, approaches, um, and for the most part, I think good dialogue and talking through things and being open minded has helped us, yeah, get over any hurdles and yeah, kind of get across, yeah, the difficult touch points, I guess.
It's that, but also, coming from sort of the creative industry where everything's subjective, right?
Yeah.
Kind of have to have a thick skin, number one. Number two, it's you need to have or develop, certainly I've developed it over time, the understanding that any critique or feedback is someone trying to help you, right? A lot of people
Yeah,
take
that's
it
good advice.
personally, and everyone's like, oh, like I hate this. But it's like they're saying that to try and help you. Like they're not saying that to just like, piss you off or something. So having the ability, like this is just a relationship point of view, is like having the ability to reflect and be like, okay, well, he's saying that because he wants it to be better. Like now I got to read in between the lines and figure out what he's reacting to and how I can sort of improve the product. Yeah, so I mean that helps in our relationship because our critiques are brutal with each other. Like they're brutal, they're unfiltered
Sure.
because we don't have time to be nice.
No, that's good advice. That's actually really good advice. So you mentioned earlier about you obviously had to fundraise for this. Do you have advice for people looking to fundraise? Because you're kind of in such a specialty niche kind of market that fundraising for you must have been maybe a bit challenging, I'm assuming.
Yeah, no, it's fundraising is an interesting thing, right? Is like what works for one person doesn't work for another. Someone just gets lucky. Someone just doesn't have any luck, doesn't talk to the right people. For us, it was probably about 2 years of prep before any fundraising, just research
Okay.
into business models, into competitors, into structures, into putting a team together that can sort of help with future fundraising. I think it's something that's obviously very intimidating for a lot of people,
Sure.
and you know the the most awkward thing is like you're gonna get so many no's, right? Always,
Yeah.
like you're gonna get 100 no's to every yes. And so again, you just have to be prepared for kind of the long haul, but also we see this a lot where people come to us now, they're like, oh well, you did a fundraise, like, hey, can you look at my deck or can you look at this? And you know it's the fundamental thing is like you need to be solving a problem of some sort,
Yeah.
and it needs to create like an impact or somehow help society. Otherwise, what's the point, And so oftentimes we see a lot of very uh, their decks without any perspective of how someone else would look at it. It's always from like the point of view of the one entrepreneur and like his point of view. And so I think taking kind of a really big picture and presenting it as if no one knows who you are, no one knows who you've done, what you've done, and no one knows what your product is, and how is it going to be perceived in 3 sentences, right? Which is what a deck is basically.
Yeah, I
Sure.
think. Sorry,
Go
just
ahead. No, go ahead.
yeah. I think what's interesting about any startup or anything is you do have to wear many hats, right? And I think
Yeah.
for fundraising, you have to be very comfortable putting on the hat to go and fundraise because you have to speak in a very different language. A deck for fundraising is different than a product pitch that you would do to your friend or someone else, right? And so I
Yeah.
think, yeah, between designers, engineers, other inventors, or whatever, sometimes they aren't speaking the same language. And so I think, yeah, what my brother said was the 2 years of research was part of that was actually just learning the language of fundraising and the whole systems of that as well.
Makes sense. I'm curious how much your network from the past kind of helped with that. And I'm also curious, I guess it's related, that a lot of the people that you're probably targeting to buy the car could also potentially invest in the company that is building their car. Is that true, or what are your thoughts on both of those?
I'll start with the second topic because that's a very
Okay.
easy one to answer. Yes, absolutely, 100%. Right. A lot of these guys want to have the coolest car, and a lot of these guys want to be part of building a car. So yes, that's easy to answer.
Okay.
The first part of that question, I think, is a little bit more complicated, and the honest answer to that is, I would say, almost zero in terms of that helping us, except
Okay.
for some of the, like, our contacts from the OEM space, kind of the big manufacturers where we worked as designers before we did sort of Oilstainlab.
Yeah.
Those guys are arguably the people that doubt you the most, are the people that are the closest to you in like social economic status, let's say. And
Ah,
so,
interesting.
and so they're like, oh, it's impossible, you can't start your own company, because they're just like you, they're in the same position as you. And yes, that's kind of true. um, so those, that was very sort of difficult to deal with, and I would say very lonely as an entrepreneur. It gets very, very lonely because people are just like totally doubting you. But
Yeah.
the people that we know from Oilstainlab, where we were building cars outside of the OEM space, but just like stuff for fun,
Yeah.
incredible fabricators, engineers, and other manufacturers, they were super supportive and super, super useful in this endeavor and sort of putting, teams together, et cetera. So yeah, kind of a two-sided answer to that question.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess that, yeah, that makes sense. And and in part of their response to you in some ways is truthful. It's like, it is really hard. Like, that's why not everybody's doing it, right? And that's why you guys chose to do it, because you obviously like that challenge, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the ultimate challenge in a way. Maybe we were a little bit bored in the OEM space, but at the
Sure.
same time, when people sort of doubt it, I'm like, how many other guys are doing their own car company? Like maybe there's
Yeah.
10, 20 around the world. I like the odds of 1 in 20 as opposed to like trying to make the NBA, which is like 1 in 1,000, right?
That's actually a really interesting way to put it, because you're right. Like, it would be really hard to be. I'm not an Elon Musk fan, but everybody knows Tesla, right? Like, it's really hard to be the next Tesla, but it's a
Yes.
hell of a lot easier to be like the niche kind of car that you guys are building, right? That's a really good advice.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So I'm curious, is there any other stuff that you would want to maybe tell the listener about Oilstainlab and the cars that we haven't covered today?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting about the cars, I think the most interesting thing is just the approach of sort of, we constantly live in a society that's, trying to make things better and move on, and the future's always better, this and that. And we are very much like anchored in the past, and we truly
Right.
think that a number of things were better in the past, but that doesn't mean we just like replicate them. So our approach has been, very different than the rest of the industry, where, with electric cars, they're putting speakers in them to make them sound like a V8 engine. To us, that's not
Right.
common.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's always kind of funny to me, but yes, it's like the baseball card and the bike spokes kind of thing as a kid.
Yeah, exactly. And so, we're very much sort of, and that's kind of why we left the big OEM companies in that space, is just we really genuinely believe that there's a better way to sort of build these cars. And obviously we do it at a small scale for now, but hopefully it'll grow over time, and the industry will sort of, yeah, wake up at some point, because it's just sad how, yeah, the car industry's really sort of forgotten what it is and what it used to stand for, especially in the sports car market.
Yeah, that's fair. And well, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it also seems like most cars these days, at least new cars, are basically just you pay a big price and then a subscription every month to have arguably basic features.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting. When I was at General Motors, we worked. It was a program that I proposed and started. It was, how do we make a car that's free, right?
okay.
And so, how much data do we have to sell? Like, how many, how much
Yeah,
privacy
interesting.
do we have to infringe on for you to get a free car? And so that's very soul damaging, even though it was a project I proposed.
Interesting. Yeah, okay. No, that's really cool. But we're kind of coming to the end of the show, so how about we close with mentioning where people can get more information about Oilstainlab, the cars, and any other links you want to mention?
Yeah. So the website, oilstainlab.com, that's the sort of most up-to-date, sort of public-facing avenue that they can check out. There's going to be a lot of cool images, some sound, video, etc., all about the car, a little bit about us. And then on Instagram, they can check out Oilstainlab, where we, kind of do more of a daily day in the life updates, and they'll see all the new stuff that's coming there first, probably.
Very cool. One final question that just came to me. Can people basically, will you ship them basically globally?
Yes, yeah, the car is designed
Okay.
to be global, yeah, left and right hand drive, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Very cool. Well, guys, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thanks, guys. Okay, bye.
For more episodes, you can find us on all major podcasting platforms or visit IamBuildingTheFuture.com. Join us next time and keep building the future.